outdoors. Coming up in this episode, we have... The wind was really buffeting me, and I found I couldn't go faster than 40 kilometres an hour. What on earth is that? This place, I knocked on the door, I yelled out, nobody was home, and struggled to put my tent up in the blustering winds. Man, it was windy. So I'm in the town of Rio Mayo in Patagonia, where I was staying at this place, the Hotel Acata, where I was the only guest. As I packed my bike, I could see that I just had way too much gear. How am I going to handle the winds? Look at it, I've got way too much gear, but what can I do? I'm not going to leave it behind. One thing I did leave behind, though, was one of my stickers on the hotel door. Got to do that. I knew to get to Route 40, I only had to head south, and there was only one road out in that direction. However, there were signs saying the road was closed and to turn left, and that put me on a dirt road going out near the cemetery. And check that out, there's Mahatma Gandhi between Jesus and Moses. Somehow I ended up on a dirt road that just turned into sand, and I got completely bogged. Luckily, my bags saved me from going deeper. Actually, just getting off the bike and taking 2 bags off was enough to get it out. Lesson learnt, don't go into soft sand when fully loaded. Eventually I found my way back onto Ruta 40 and started heading south. However, most of it was dirt. There was a new paved section that ran parallel, but there were signs saying it wasn't open yet. The wind was really buffeting me, and I found I couldn't go faster than 40 kilometres an hour because the bike felt unstable. In fact, I nearly came off a few times. I started thinking about the chain being in the sand back in town, so I stopped a few times and oiled it. With all the bags, I could only access 4 inches of chain, so you can see here I would oil a bit, push it forward a few feet, oil a bit more. You can tell by the oil patches on the ground there. The bike didn't wander around as much now that it had a grip on the hard surface, but I still found myself leaning sideways into the wind, and the wind seemed to be getting stronger and stronger by the minute. That road sign says it all. I was following a caravan, which was also getting buffeted around, coming into the town of Perito Moreno. I caught up with him at a police checkpoint, just on the entrance of the town. He was talking to a policewoman. I asked the same policewoman how was the road further south on Ruta 40, and she said, "Es mi consejo fuerte," which means it's my strong advice that I do not continue. She said, the wind this week has been very bad. It's a very isolated road. If it does sprinkle a bit of rain, it becomes extremely slippery, and traffic is so light I might lie there for hours before someone even comes and finds me lying on the road. And I was a bit disappointed because I wanted to go to the Cueva de los Manos, which was further down that road. I wanted to go there because there are beautiful cave paintings in the form of hand stencils over 9,000 years old. But as far as I could see on the map, the only access road came off Ruta 40. And by the way, this particular policewoman was very, very pretty, and I asked if I could take her photo, and she smiled and she just shook her head and said it's not allowed and walked away. But I did get this one of her walking away. I continued into town on Ruta 40 because I needed to buy gas, and at the gas station they told me the camino was bueno, the road is good. But then I started thinking about my friend Jeff Beecher back in Valparaiso. Himself, a motorcycle safety instructor, told me when he was on Ruta 40 he had to take Ruta 3 because he came off his bike 5 times in one day due to the wind. And he was on a heavy BMW. I pulled out my road atlas and looked at the map. Ruta 40 from here snaked around a series of tablelands with such names as Meseta del Viento, Plateau of the Wind, Meseta Carbon or de la Muerte, the Plateau of Charcoal or Death. And then there's the Meseta La Siberia, needs no translation. And I really didn't have to think very long. I'm going to turn around, go back, take the sealed road, Ruta 3, and I just have to skip the caves. But not before passing Perito Moreno's beautiful pink church. And look at the wooden doors. Looks like ship's anchors on the doors. Now, to get to Ruta 3, which is the coastal route, I had to drive over 300 kilometres due east along Provincial Highway 43. But that road was sealed and I had the wind behind me. And boy, oh boy, did that give me a boost. I saw a lot of animals on this road. There were horses, sheep, guanacos I saw. Unfortunately, they ran away before I could get my camera out. And as you know, my helmet cam's still broken. But I did manage to get one shot of this flock of birds scurrying away. I think they're a Patagonian rhea or nyandu. They're very well camouflaged though. Look how flat it is. No trees or anything to break the wind. Hang on, what's that? that actually looks like a windbreak. I think I'll pull in there and check it out. My idea was to set my camera up on a tripod, but it was so windy, even with this windbreak, I dare not leave it. Because I wanted to photograph something, I brought a little anemometer, and I wanted to see just how windy it was. Okay, 21.1 metres per second. That's over 75 kilometres an hour, or 47 point something miles per hour. And that was just while I was holding it. And that's behind the L-shaped windbreak. Imagine what it is out on the road. Next, there was another Gauchito Gil shrine. You wonder how long those flags last in these high winds. Coming into the town of Las Heras, I started seeing a lot of these oil wells bobbing up and down like a slow-motion chicken. I wasn't expecting to see these. They're kind of interesting. This area is kind of like the Texas oil fields of Argentina. The town is a virtual hub of oil pipelines that radiate in all different directions like a giant cartwheel. You can see them quite clearly on Google Earth. As the wind was really tossing me around like a paper aeroplane, it was already like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, time to look for somewhere to stay, so I decided to go into Las Heras. In the gas station, they told me it was a little bit windier than normal. A little bit. There was dust everywhere, looking for cabanas or somewhere to stay, and I saw this. This is the Cultural Centre. It's sponsored by the state-run oil company YPF, or EPF, and I actually read later that that very day I visited that town, the Argentine president nationalised the company and bought it off Repsol, the Spanish company, and it caused a huge court case about how much the company was really worth. The nationalisation came just a year after YPF Repsol discovered huge new oil deposits in Patagonia. So of course the Spanish weren't very happy about it. Ironically, this cultural centre was opened by Cristina Kirchner, the then president of Argentina, who initiated the nationalisation of YPF. Her late husband, who was also president, was from Patagonia, and ironically, 3 of her grandparents were Spanish. This looked like a company town with no cabanas that I could see, so I decided to keep going east. Look at the farewell at this town. No arch, but an artistic chopper. Buen viaje. There was actually a sign on the other side touting the fact that Las Heras hosts the southernmost motorcycle meet in the world. With that strong wind behind me, I was going faster than I've ever gone before, 120 kilometres per hour according to my speedometer, but then something stopped me dead in my tracks. The Bredasaurio. This metallic dinosaur was constructed from scrap oil pipes, valves, etc. by the Bridas Company of Argentina, a big oil company, who, by the way, since 2010 is 50% owned by Chinese interests.
Pero no soy chino, soy argentino.
Constructed from leftovers from the fossil fuel industry, it's a reminder that Patagonia was rich in dinosaurs and fossils dating back millions of years. In fact, paleontologists recently discovered a dinosaur nest with more than 100 eggs and 80 skeletons intact. And speaking of fossils, getting a bit off topic here, but only a few miles from here, at a place called Punto Peligro, in 1992 was discovered the fossil teeth of a platypus. Yes, a platypus. They had them in Patagonia millions of years ago. I left the town of Pico Truncado and continued at over 100 kilometres an hour southeast. I wonder what that is. I wonder if it's an old railway station. I reckon I could camp inside there. Would give me good shelter from the wind. But look at that high fence. No, I better keep going. Reminds me of rural Australia, some of the things I'm seeing around here. Finally, I left Provincial Road 43 and turned south into Ruta Tres, the road that will take me all the way to the southern tip of South America. The little town of Fitzroy was just a mile away. This place, I knocked on the door, I yelled out, nobody was home. It advertised rooms for rent, had a nice antique gas pump, but nobody at home when I called out and knocked on the door. I found a nice little place in the centre of town called Hospedaje Mary, but the owner said all her rooms were taken by men working for the company. Then I called at the tourist office. The friendly lady there called around for a few places and then said, sorry, there's no rooms left in town. When I mentioned I could camp, she said, well, that's okay, because there's a camping ground right next door. So that was solved. But before I set up camp, I went back to the YPF gas station to fill up and buy dinner. This EPF had a little restaurant inside, and the cashier took one look at my bike, chuckled and said, are you moving house? While I was stuffing my face with a microwave cheese and chicken sandwich, a teenage boy came in to fill up one of his thermoses with free hot water that they use for their yerba mate, the tea that they drink here. The cashier pointedly cried out, Hola, ¿cómo estás? How are you? With a smile on her face. The teenager looked slightly embarrassed. A sign right behind her, prominently displayed, said in Spanish, in this place we say good day, good afternoon, thank you, very good and please, which you have to admit you don't hear as much these days as you did in the old days. There was an interesting photo on the top shelf there and the lady showed it to me. It was a picture of a huge white puma, shot a year or two ago by a local farmer at Estancia Floradora. It looks huge and it looks white, a snow puma. Sad that it got shot, but the farmer's excuse is that they're protecting their livestock. My hunger satisfied, I hurried back to the camping ground and struggled to put my tent up in the blustering winds. Man, it was windy. I tried to make a windbreak between that barbecue and my bike, but look at it. Look at that windmill. Is it going to self-destruct? But you know what? It was easy to fall asleep because as soon as the sun went down, the wind dropped. It must be something to do with the sun, because it reaches its maximum around 2 p.m. every day. I forgot to press the log button on my Garmin GPX, so I have no GPX track for today, but I did write down the odometer reading at every town, and I was able to work out that I did around 465 kilometres. Not bad, seeing that I got a late start at 9 a.m. and lost a bit of time getting bogged and everything. Got here just before sunset at 5:45. That's all for now, amigos, but be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out what's coming up in the next episode. Wow, wild guanacos. That says Estación La Gringa, the Gringa's sheep farm. That sign says it's 107 metres below sea level, the lowest place in both the southern and western hemispheres. That appears to be a poster for a cavalcade that starts in the northernmost point of Argentina, goes all the way down to Tierra del Fuego and ends in Las Malvinas, which is the Falklands.